move. I think I am waiting on this person. Yeah.
We're jumping into game 3 here.
Cool.
Okay. So we have a little more time. We're playing a 30-minute game, and we can talk through moves a little bit better, and hopefully make it easier to retain some things going on. So what are you thinking here?
So I mean, I made the move, and again, apologies. I'm just getting my
Yep.
chess pieces
No, it's so
correct
awesome
here.
that you're getting the notation, meaning like coordinates and
Yeah,
all.
I mean, it'd be all too easy to say what I wanted to here is G1 to G3, but instead, I am going to confirm that this is, in fact, a knight that I'd like to move from
Yep.
G1 to G3.
Exactly.
And I don't really have any great reason for it, but it seems like a solid move. I've made it, I believe, the last 2 games,
I think
and
you're
it
onto
kind of gets
something though.
things.
It seems like a solid move because it's following your opening principles. I think that's
Mm, Yeah,
I think
that's
that's what you
yeah,
meant to
that's
say. I
it.
might be giving you too much credit, but
Absolutely.
take
Well,
it.
and we'll
Yep.
Roger die with this.
And it was nice that you were keying in on last game how because of castling, how it put your king into a good position, like a nice safe area. Because
Awesome.
that's generally what it's going to do when you castle, and that's the reason you do want to castle.
All right. Nice.
So F4 is not always a traditional opening move, but it's one you can definitely play, the one that you did. So he's being a
Okay.
little more passive with that E6 move. So we want to try to work towards the center too.
And bringing like a second pawn, like I'm thinking a pawn from D2 to maybe D3. I think that
D3
might
or
be.
D4, either one works. D3 is good. Either one.
Let's bring it to D4.
Yep. So you're stopping his pawn from moving forward, which is really important.
Nice.
You got a good lock on that center right now. And now we want to keep developing the pieces. So what else do you see on our back rank, our back row that needs to be developed? I see 3 things jump out to me immediately.
Just kind of playing with the pieces now.
Mm-hmm.
So that'd be the rook. Would bringing the rook from H1 to G1 accomplish anything? I'm trying to figure
No,
that out
no. We want
myself.
to leave the
Okay.
rooks alone for, I want to say as long as possible, but for quite a while. We want to focus on the development of the minor pieces, so those knights and the bishops, remember?
Okay.
Before we make a move here, let's just make sure and I haven't been doing this because it's a quicker game, so we just want to make sure we're recognizing what his moves are doing. So with him moving the knight to c6, doing a couple
Mm-hmm.
things. One is developing, but 2, it's actually attacking one of our pieces. Do you see that?
Um,
With that L-shaped movement.
T's, okay, the L shape. Would that be my knight on F3 or no? Is
Nope.
that hmm?
So
I
from
don't. I don't see
c6,
it.
yeah. So
Good
from
to know.
c6, he's attacking our pawn on d4. Do you see it now?
1, 4. Oh, okay. Yeah.
So is that pawn protected by anything?
No, but if I
Are
move
you
the
sure?
pawn, is it? No, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Definitely not sure.
Obviously, you're wrong. That's why I'm saying that. It is protected. We have the knight on f3. So f3 to d4. You see how that's protecting?
Yes.
And then, not to forget about our wonderful queen, she's also protecting it. So the queen has that advantage on the d file, where it's always going to be protecting that pawn that is kind of behind until the queen moves. You see what I mean?
Yes.
So we don't have to
Yep.
be concerned about him attacking that piece, but it's more of the practice of just going to recognize, is the move that my opponent made attacking anything? What is it doing? Is it attacking things? Is it, part of a trick? I don't know. Is it just development? Is it a good move? Is it a bad move? And at the level you're at, you're not always able to tell if it's a good move or a bad move, but you can at least recognize what it's attacking, because a lot of people have like a bias of, I know I want to make XYZ move, and sometimes they ignore the move their opponent makes because they know what they think they want to do, but that ends up being the wrong thing because the move their opponent made, kind of refutes that in some way. So
Okay.
I just wanted to bring that up as a habit to get into.
Good to know for sure.
But back
I'm
to your move.
struggling on my
Yep.
next move here. Just kind of with that in mind, it seems like I'm pretty protected, at
So
least in the moves he can make right now.
defensively, you're good, but what would you have to do to castle on your king side before you can do that?
Um, hmm. would that be bringing the bishop from c1 to d2?
Other bishop,
No.
but yes, you'd have to move it. You'd move the bishop out of the way, basically, that light squared bishop, if you want to castle on the king side. Right piece, wrong square. It wouldn't necessarily be e2 here. You could move it to really almost any square, but it's the right idea. So, but right now, obviously, that light squared bishop can't move, correct?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it, no.
So we have the g2 pawn and the e2 pawn that are in the way. So why don't you move pawn to e2? I'm sorry, e3. Pawn's on e2 now, from e2 to e3. Now that's going to open up a bunch of space for that bishop to move to. And then after that
Gotcha.
bishop moves, we can prepare to castle. So again,
Nice.
just following those opening principles. We want to develop our minor pieces. We want to get ready to castle, and we want to move towards the center.
Okay.
Doing all those three things at once. So like even when you're playing on your own and no one's watching or no one's kind of giving you help, it's just remembering those opening principles is the way to go here.
Definitely will be studying up on that. Make sure I remember that.
They become very natural.
Awesome.
Like if I'm 10 moves in and I look and I see I have a bishop that hasn't moved yet, I say, uh-oh, let me get that involved somehow. Because with it being, again, my corny reference of it being a team sport, if it's a team sport, you need to get everybody involved. You can't leave two people, on the bench basically, and that's what you're doing by leaving a bishop or a knight, on a starting square.
Gotcha.
You need to really get everybody involved.
Got to open up their movements.
So he's thinking here. We have more time to talk about it. So yeah, we see that light square bishop on f1 has to be developed. Into our queen side, what do we see on the queen side that we want to develop?
Okay, let's take a look here.
When I say queen side, I mean everything, from the queen to that side of the board. So on the ABC files, and I say king side, FGH.
So probably getting the bishop in action could be a move from c1 to potentially, d2?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Oh, okay. That's quick. That works.
Nice.
What else do we see on that side of the board?
Now, I'm definitely a little bit forgetful of the movements. Should I be kind of sheltering, so to speak, the queen from d1 to c1?
Nope, you don't need to move the queen. The queen is what you want to kind of avoid moving here.
Right, okay.
Now, this move here, let's talk about it quickly. So what is that move that he played, that bishop to b4 doing?
And this can make... This isn't the L-shaped move piece,
Nope,
is it?
This is diagonal, yep.
So... Is he hoping that I make like a move out at e1 to take a bishop here, to the king?
So the square that he moved his bishop to on b4, it's attacking your bishop on d2. Do you see that?
Yeah, but right now it's sheltered. Like
It's protected, exactly.
Protected, rather.
But one thing that's really good to notice is sometimes you can attack and develop at the same time.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is you can move towards the center, and the way to do it here, if you play pawn from c2 to c3, that pawn is now attacking his bishop. He has to move backwards, so he's losing a move, basically losing a tempo just by having to defend it. And we're developing that pawn towards the center in the meantime.
Okay.
You see how it's serving like 2-3 different purposes?
Yeah, I do see that. So his best move now is to move backwards with his bishop off of b4.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Just that.
So he had to move backwards and regain a tempo there. So I see. Let's our light square bishop. Let's go ahead and get that involved in the game. Let's try. I know you seem to like moving the bishops to the second rank, the second row there. Let's try to move this one to d3. The light square bishop.
That would be the bishop from f1 to d3.
You got it.
Perfect.
You don't even need my help.
No, come on.
And what do we want to do next?
That's a great question. Let's look this over here. Would I be pushing the pawn from c3 upward?
Nope.
No.
We want to
Okay.
do something with the king. King safety is the best safety.
Safety. Would I be moving that over to F1 from E1?
It
Or
would
can
be
I move that
G1. Castling,
G1?
yep.
Castling it.
Let's
Okay.
use the name just to make
Perfect.
sure we're talking about the same thing, but yes.
Got
Yep.
it.
King protection, when we get out of that, once we get that all taken care of, then we can go on our attacks. But we got to remember our order of operations. Now, that was we call it a bad mistake in chess is a blunder. That was a blunder by him,
I did see that at the end of the game. It told me I made like 3 blunders last game.
probably.
Uh,
But that's
there's
okay.
something like lost wins as well.
Yeah, you can get those analysis. I mean, they're helpful, but they're helpful to review, but don't expect to never make blunders because everyone does
Right.
fail.
Yeah.
Um,
I could never expect that.
So we see he moved his pawn from e6 to e5.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have to do a little bit of calculation here. So we have 2 pawns that we could potentially take that pawn with. So which pawns are those?
So pawns.
What squares are they
There's
on, I
one
should
on
say?
E3, right?
We have the one on.
No, that's already made a move, so that
Yep.
can't go up to. I'm trying.
So we're going to take diagonally. So we have the pawn on d4 and the pawn on f4 that could both take.
Okay.
And they're both going to
Okay.
be protected by whatever pawn you don't take with. So this is an example of what's called a fork, meaning one piece attacking 2 pieces at the same time. So
Mm-hmm.
automatically, when you take with one of those pawns, the pawn that you move forward, is going to be attacking that bishop and that knight. So that bishop on d6 and that knight on f6. Do you see that?
Do you see that? Yes.
So let's go ahead and take with the pawn on f4. We'll take the pawn on e5, and then we're going to win a piece here. We're going to be up in material because you
Nice.
see how it's attacking actually both of those pieces now.
I
So you
do.
can only move one out of the way, and that means we win the other one.
Perfect. I do see that. Nice.
So that's just something we gotta put kind of thought and consideration into recognizing. Like for me, when I see that, I automatically say, "Oh, no, that wins a piece right there." But it takes a ton of practice to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So castling is still something we want to keep on our radar.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned
I
before,
was gonna wonder, was the move we just made? I guess just winning some material there, going up. That was more important at the time than castling.
that is
If I'm gathering.
exactly it. That
Okay.
is the perfect way to look at it. As I was mentioned before, a lot of beginners put in their head like, "I want to make this move next," and they ignore what their opponent does. So if we ignored what happened there, our opponent could have kind of fixed that. He could have rectified that mistake. We don't want to allow that to happen. We need to make sure we're always paying attention, and this is the result of that. He may go what we call into the think tank here, meaning he's going to take his time and try to figure out a way out of it, but there's no good way out of this, I can tell you that.
Nice. Okay. And I'm protected
Mhm.
right now. It looks like that, at least from what I can gather on this.
Yeah,
board.
you're still not under kind of real danger, but that was even worse move by him. Okay, so you can take back here.
Okay.
If you take back with the pawn, what
Yeah.
happens?
That
I was kind of hoping he would
the
do this.
queen's looking like it could just swoop me up, right?
Nope. Okay, so if you take the pawn from d4 to e5, now once again, both his knight and his bishop
Oh,
are
sorry,
under
pawn.
attack.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
like he can take the pawn, but then that pawn is protected by your knight on f3. So this was the wrong move by him because he's going to lose another piece. So we're going to go ahead and we want to take with that pawn on d4.
And then right to e5 with it. Yeah, that looks like an upgrade for sure.
So yeah, now both those pieces are under attack. So he can take with the bishop, but then he loses the bishop because we would take with the knight on f3. So this is kind of a really good example of just kind of high level kind of beginner calculation.
Mm-hmm.
And to say, you know, right now you're up a piece, but you're going to be up one more piece in a second. He might try to find something creative, and we'll take our time to kind of think through what he's doing. But this is you're beyond better here. We call this close to winning, meaning, you know, you would have to really make a mistake to lose when you're up 2 pieces.
Awesome.
Like you don't have an immediate attack per se, but even just having the mindset of I want to trade pieces worth similar values at this point would probably win you the game pretty easily. Meaning, I'll trade my bishop for his bishop and my knight for his knight, and my bishop for his knight, and so on, rook for rook, queen for queen, you'd
Hmm.
probably end up winning in the end.
Awesome. So he's taking his time. We'll see
Yeah.
if he thinks of something creative here.
Yeah, he's looking for answers.
Do you see
Best.
do you see like a great move that he could make right now
No.
to kind of save himself? No.
No.
Okay.
Don't. I think knight to g4 for him is creative, but I don't think it does anything. Yeah, I think he just realized he was losing it. Okay. So what would you like to do here?
Um. So I think we were just talking about the knight.
Mm-hmm.
And that move over to.
Well, let's backtrack. Remember when we moved the pawn to e5?
Yes.
And it was attacking both the bishop and the knight?
Mm-hmm.
So he moved the bishop. So what piece is still under attack there?
Is the pawn still under attack?
No, I'm sorry. What pawn of? I'm sorry. What piece of his is still under attack from that pawn?
Would it be his bishop on f6?
Nope, that knight that's on f6. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. You had right square, wrong piece.
Sorry. Yeah. Knight, rather. Learning.
All good.
Gotcha.
I still do that sometimes when I'm talking out loud.
So I can go ahead. I could just
Yep, go for it.
here.
And I will tell you, we're talking and playing right now. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
talking and playing is much more difficult than just playing.
I think it's helpful because, especially if I ever come to play with someone in person,
Absolutely.
it's good to have this.
We'll get you to tournaments in no time. Okay, so the move before all that madness took place was we were talking about castling, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we can go back to that plan.
That's a great move. It looks like I will do just that.
And now you're just in a beautiful spot. The only piece that's not developed is that knight that we have on b1, but we have plenty of compensation, meaning like plenty of things in exchange for that.
Cool.
Okay.
Looked like a big move, or at least a lot of space.
Yeah, he moved the bishop quite far. So this is something good to get used to. When you want to kick a piece off of a square, what you can do is play. So for example, you can move a pawn towards it. And what I mean by that here, our h pawn that's on h2, let's move that to h3 to say, well, if you don't move your bishop out of the way, we're going to take it.
Yeah.
And we're going to try to get.
Oh, that seems like a great move.
And remember how last game I think it was his bishop or his knight was pinned to his king.
Mm-hmm.
So here, our knight right now is pinned to our queen, meaning if we move our knight, he wins our queen. So we want to do what we can to try to break that pin, meaning like
gotcha.
Either move the queen out of the way.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And this would still be this piece's first move, correct?
Which piece is that?
This would be the pawn on h2.
Yep, it would be his first move. Yep.
But I'll just move it up to h3. And how do you keep track of that? Like
the computer does it for you. Do you mean like if it could move one square?
I guess in a live setting, is that something you just kind of have to keep in mind that it's already moved?
If the pawn is on the second rank, then it hasn't moved yet. Like you can always be sure of that because they can never move backwards.
They can never move back. That's
right.
That's the answer I was looking for.
That's basically the way to figure it out. If it's on h3, obviously it has moved. If it's on h4, same thing. If it's on h4, I'm sorry, h4, the fourth rank in general, it could have moved once or twice. But at that point, it isn't really relevant.
Cool. That makes sense.
Oh, we had a good move there that I just... Actually, no, we didn't. I thought I missed it.
So we kind of retreated on that.
Yep. So we're at this point, this is where we have to be a little bit patient. We're better, but it's one of those things where we say, like, you have to prove it. Meaning, you just got to play the right moves and prove it. So we just have to look to take over the center of the board and attack a little bit.
Okay.
What I like here, we want to get our queen off the back row. Let's play queen to c2. A little bit subtle, but then we're going to go after his light square bishop after. So So after that, what I think we're again looking to exchange is going to be a little bit of our strategy right here. And we're not going to overextend ourselves to try to do that. But if we're up +5, like you see at the bottom there next to your name, then
Yep.
trading off pieces is probably going to benefit us. So I'm going to give you a little pro tip here. When we see him moving all the pieces off his queen side, that often means our opponent is looking to castle on the queen side. Get that cross board, try to get that aggressive game going. So immediately, that was my thought here as I say, well, he can castle queenside now. We want to be a little preemptive. Let's play pawn to a4. So if he does start castling that way, or does castle that way next move, we're already kind of a step ahead in attacking. Does that make sense?
I see it. Yep, I do see that.
We're kind of jumping the gun here, but that's not a bad thing.
So would you be surprised if he doesn't castle here?
No, and the reason I say that is because I never try to expect a beginner level opponent to do anything. They don't always play the right moves. I know what a good move would be. A good move would be castle. Or really, either side I think is okay. Probably king side is better, but it would make sense. Really thinking it through, queen side could make sense because if he's down material and he has to attack, it's going to create a more aggressive game. So kind of more opportunities for us to make mistakes. But either way, yeah, so he went king side there.
All right.
So let's move towards the center a little more. Let's move our knight to a central square from f3 to d4.
3.
So it's going to be putting pressure on his light square bishop. Do you see that?
Yes.
In that L-shaped movement. So we can take that next turn. And again, we want to try to make exchanges here if we can. One other thing is we can actually attack his king here. We can have that bishop on d3. We can take his pawn on h7 and put him in check. And he can't take anything back because that bishop is protected by the queen. Do you see that as well?
Yeah.
So we're when you're in a better position, moves just kind of make them. I don't say they make themselves, but it's easier to have good moves.
Gotcha.
Because things are working in your favor already.
Right.
Yeah, when you have a better position, it should be often easy to kind of find a fluent, natural, good move. Doesn't mean you should make it quickly. You still got to take your time, think it through, make sure there's nothing better hanging around, but there's always opportunities.
Awesome. Now, if you moved his pawn from h7 to h5, which I think is possible.
It is. h6 is also
that
possible.
would kind of counter the move we're just discussing.
Exactly.
Here, right?
We could put him in check, but we don't want to do that check because it doesn't accomplish anything.
Okay.
And that's something to kind of remember as you progress in your kind of skill is you don't want to make checks just to make checks. You want to make checks for a purpose.
That's definitely an interesting point.
Ooh, what a move. All right, you want to have some fun. He's sacrificing his bishop to try to attack our king. Let's think of the best way to go.
So
we could take back with our pawn.
Mm-hmm.
Then he's going to take with his queen. So we have to find a way to get in there. Okay. Go ahead and take it. I think we're okay.
Okay, so I'm going to go with the pawn from g2 to h3.
You got it. See, I don't even need to tell you anymore.
Perfect.
So he's going to do what now? He's going to take that h3 pawn with his queen.
Try that there.
So we want to try to trade queens here because he just sacrificed another piece, meaning we're going to be of 3 pieces. The best way I think we can do that, should he take the h3 pawn with his queen, which is what I expect, but it doesn't mean it will happen, we're going to play a really subtle move. We want to try to put his queen right next to our queen. We want to put ours in front and say, hey, let's trade them off here. So our queen on c2 is being blocked by that bishop on d2. You see that?
Yes.
So my thought is let's get that bishop out of the way. So right now that bishop on d2 is serving the purpose of protecting the pawn on e3. So if we move the bishop back to c1, still protecting that pawn on e3, but now the queen has opened up to move towards where his queen would be. Did that make sense?
Yeah, I think I'm following that.
It's layered, but just trying to think through the way to go about this. And again,
Cool.
we want to put him in positions to make trades, and then we have a couple of sneaky moves after that too. Should that all play out?
Nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's funny sometimes. Well, you're make kind of calculations like I just did there of what we could do, what would be best, and then you get 3, 4, 5 moves down the road, and then the first move kind of that you calculated your opponent doesn't make, and you're like, well, that didn't work.
So it's really just, once you're a little bit better, it's thinking down the line.
That's exactly it. And I think a lot of this is pattern recognition. A lot of this is just experience. A lot of this is knowing the situation on the board and based on experience and trying to say, what's the best thing I can do, knowing I'm up, 7 points of material right now, and what is the best long-term strategy to have? Is it to make exchanges? Is it to trade things off? Is it to be conservative or try to avoid exchanges? All things kind of in the back of your head you try to want to have
Cool.
some type
Very
of sights
cool.
on.
Nice. And he's definitely taking his time.
Yep.
Seems like he's in a tough spot, possibly.
He's in a very tough spot. Okay.
Okay.
So look at me, I'm a psychic.
So that's his king.
Yep. His queen, you mean?
Queen.
Yep.
Apologies. Yeah,
No, it's okay.
that's definitely good to
over.
know. Okay, so bringing my bishop back to c1.
That's what I would recommend. Yep. And then we have a couple tricky things to do after this. So if he's smart, he'll want to get his other pieces involved, but his bishop is going to have a hard time. The dark square bishop's going to have a hard time getting involved here. Because there's no direct pathway towards our king. Like right now, he can take our knight, and it would be an exchange. It wouldn't benefit him because we're already up in material. And then if he tries to go to bishop to h5, h4, he could get there eventually, but it's slow. It doesn't get to our king very quickly, and by the time he does, we can have kind of extra defenses aligned. So I got a sneaky move after this, depending on what he does. But yeah, our first order of business here is I think just trying to trade queens. We're up a bunch of material. The moment we take his queen off the board, we get rid of a lot of his attacking chances.
Awesome.
And the more you can just diminish that, the more you're just kind of solidifying your chance of winning.
Amazing.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling like I'm learning a lot, honestly. It's going to be a lot more work after that, but that's, to be expected here.
Okay, so that's a decent move. He could be attacking there. So we want to offer that queen trade still.
Okay.
But hold on, let's make sure we do this properly. So I'm just going to do some calculation here.
So the queen trade would be from c2 to h2, or is that not right? No.
I think no. That is one way to offer it, but my concern here. So again, doing some calculation. We only have one piece attacking that. I'm sorry, protecting that e3 pawn. Do you see that? We have the bishop that we move back to c1.
Yes.
So my thought before was if we play queen to g2, looking for that trade. So what he would be able to play from there, he would have his bishop take on e2. I'm sorry, e3, which would be a check. We would have our bishop take back, and then he could take with his queen, putting us in check. And our king isn't really in a great place to protect, and our bishop on d3 would be hanging. So he'd be able to win a piece out of that. So we want to be a little more careful. I think at first, queen to f2 is better. And then we can try to force the queen trade from there.
To f2.
So this is what I was referring to before, is we're in a better position, but he's going to have some attacking chances, and we still have to be a bit patient. We can't be forcing, or else we're going to lose material or get checkmated, something like that.
Perfect.
It's always that balance of keeping your foot on the gas, keeping the pressure on, but still not, over pursuing.
What a game, man. It's a game like no other I've ever played, I can tell you that.
There's layers on layers and layers within those layers.
Absolutely.
And the moves I'm telling you, I'm sure there's better moves too.
Right.
Computers are computers, and they can find stuff that you and I would never think of, and they find the
Yeah,
moves that are not at all intuitive, that look
I
weird and
hear
ugly, but they calculate 15 moves down the road and
right,
things that just
and
don't look natural.
the point with computers, you can't beat them if it's like a proper computer.
Yep.
No human can.
Yeah, it's scary.
They
And that's why
every
they're going to take
play.
over the world in 2 years. 5G and all that other stuff.
Oh man, just wait till they hit poker. Screwed.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's thinking quite a bit here. When you're in a losing position, you often use a lot of your clock to try to figure things out. But
Okay.
all right, so now I think we can offer that queen trade. He's doing a smart thing and putting pressure on that pawn, trying to win that from us. Let's play queen to f3. I think that's okay here.
Cool.
So that's going to offer that queen trade.
You think he'll go for it? Is it like a no-brainer?
Oh, I hope I didn't. Okay, never mind. I thought I blundered something, but I didn't. I don't know if it's a no-brainer. Yeah, I don't know. This is the difficulty trying to predict beginner players.
Yeah. So he did not go for it.
You know what he did instead?
Brought the rook up.
This is just a miss by him. We offered a queen trade. He didn't do it. So what do we do instead?
We could take our knight, right, and go for his rook.
We could, but if we look elsewhere, let's look at his queen. Is there anything protecting it?
No.
So I think that's the best move.
That's just bringing my queen from f3 over to h3.
Yep. This is my point about trying to predict what beginner players are going to do, or any level players. Sometimes you just miss things.
So I heard the check.
Yep. It wasn't a check. It was just a take, like a capture.
All right.
No check yet. But you were right. You keyed in on he was leaving his rook, open to be taken by our knight, which would have been a good exchange for us. But we found a good move like that, and then we found a better one, which was taking his queen for free. So it's always being patient, saying, I think I found the best move, but let me review the board once more. And you would be shocked at how many times you say, wait a minute, there is actually a better move here. There's moves that are going to win you games that you find like that. So he's still probably looking at our e3 pawn. Okay, there's a mate in one here, meaning we have checkmate in one move. Let's try to coordinate our light square bishop and our queen. I'm going to see if you can do it. Take your time. There's a square that we can attack right near his king that would win us the game. You have 12 minutes, so I don't need to feel like I got to jump in here.
Okay, so light squared bishop is the clue here.
Well, working.
And our queen.
Yes, exactly. It's that teamwork. It's getting all the team players involved.
Yeah, let me just take a second. I'm going to review the movements real quick and just kind of think this one through.
Yep.
Quick. Any number of vacant squares can move to square diagonally or something. Okay. A lot more movement capability with our queen. So
Yep.
I'm gathering I could probably put him in an unwinnable position with my light squared bishop. That's my thought process, at least in terms of first move.
Mm-hmm. There's only, to be honest, it's just one move that will win you the game right here on the spot.
Okay, and I do not see it yet. It's good to know.
When you have these type of attacks, I mean, the attack is here because I'm telling you. It's not like in a normal game you'd automatically spot this, but you often want to take the two pieces that are working together and find the spot where they come together. So like you would want to start here with the bishop because it has fewer movement patterns and say, where is possible movements right here? And then you do the same with the queen. And then you say, well, which of those squares do they both meet at? Is it something I can use to attack with? Did that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay.
and
I don't know if that was the
I'm
proper
working
wording.
through it.
Yep.
I see my possible moves. I'm just trying to figure out the the end game. So I think I'm still thinking in terms of two plays here, while you're seeing one, and I'm not seeing that yet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, hmm. If I take my
We actually talked
if I
about
take my
attacking this square earlier. I think it was this game. I don't remember if it was
so
another.
if I take my bishop from D3 to G6, that's it. Like he can't move. Is that it?
That's not it.
Okay.
So it is a light square. You're very close. But you want to get right in close with his king, closer than that.
So I could take the other move here is my queen to his pawn on H7.
You got it.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it, and we're gonna see the results here.
We did see the results.
That's it. Okay, explain this one to me, because I saw that as an option, but I didn't quite count. Wait, so he can't? No, he can't move.
That's exactly it. He's under.
Wow.
That's the condition. Is
I
you're
saw that
under check
earlier.
and there's nowhere to move. He can't take the. The big thing is you need to make sure the piece you're attacking with is protected. So the queen you want to use the most because it's going to cover the most ground. Like if you took with
Okay.
the bishop there, it wouldn't have been checkmate because he could move to h8.
Right,
You see that?
right.
So that's why you want
So
to use the queen.
it's all about the next move. Like that, the end of the game is when there are no more moves to make,
Well,
essentially.
they're
Or maybe
close.
that's not quite.
There's nowhere for his king to move. His king has nowhere to move, and the
So
king
that's it.
can't capture the piece that's attacking him. Like
It's
so, for
just
example, if you took that pawn with your
right.
queen without the bishop being there, it's not checkmate.
Mhm.
You just hung your queen, really. Like you attacked his pawn with your queen, and then he just takes your queen back. But because the queen is protected by that bishop, that's the big difference. So
Gotcha. Okay, so he is no longer able to move with his king.
in the exercise that we did last game with that checkmate, we'll do here quickly. So like normally you have those 8 squares around the king. Because it's on the back row, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm highlighting on my board. I know you can't see them, but that is f7, f8. You have g7. You have g8 where the king is. Then you have h7, h8. So you want to walk through those quickly?
Yeah, sorry. Can you from the top one more
Yeah.
time? I just gotta
Yep.
X'd out of the
No
screen.
problem. So remember last game after when we talked about the checkmate, we talked about there were 8 squares around the king, and we talked about why the king couldn't go to any of them when it was checkmate.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's do the same thing here, but we don't have 8
Okay.
squares because the king is on the 8th rank. There's only 5 squares around him. So we have f7, f8, g7, and it's on g8, the king, and then we have h7, h8. Do you want to talk through them? Do you feel comfortable? Obviously, we can work
Yeah.
together.
Let me just review the moves of the king real quick. King can move exactly one square, horizontally, vertically, or diagonally. So
one
essentially,
in any direction.
One in any direction. So I guess my only question, I see how he's blocked in. What about the move from G8 to H8?
So remember how the king can go, I'm sorry, the queen can go horizontally, vertically, diagonally?
Yes.
So at this point, that's the biggest difference between taking on h7 with the bishop and the queen. Because the queen is also attacking h8, because that's kind of the vertical that she can attack. But right now she's attacking diagonally. She's doing both at the same time, basically.
Okay, so no, so if that, and the king could have moved hypothetically to H8, but it would have been
Exactly.
It's over.
The king has to move to a safe square, and because we're attacking with the queen, h8 is not a safe square because that square is also under attack by the queen.
So it basically ended the game because my next move would have been it. But no, the rules of the game
Yes,
essentially
yes, you're correct in what you're saying. The game doesn't exactly work that way, but I get what you're saying. The
Okay,
king
no,
has
that's
nowhere
good.
safe to move. Is kind of the bottom line.
Gotcha. Oh, that's very helpful.
So your final test here, I want you to walk me through the 5 squares around the king and say why those don't move as possible movements. So I can tell you what squares I'm talking about: the f7, f8, g7, then h7, h8. Do you see what I'm talking about? That little area around the king, the black king.
Yes. Yep.
So like we did with last game, let's just walk through why the king wouldn't be able to move to any of those squares.
Okay. So the king obviously is blocked in by the existing. We got two rooks here on f8 and
That's
then
exactly
e8.
right. Yep.
So the first two, no movement there. Um, Next up we
Let's do
have
f7 next.
f7. Um,
He can't move there because
well, he can't move there because the pawns are there.
exactly.
So
Yep.
I was just kind of thinking ahead, like if they had moved a step forward, but it still just would have been too late.
Yep.
Um,
Same thing goes for
and
g7,
then
right?
yeah, g7 as well, obviously being blocked in
Yep.
by the pawn there. And you know, I think we're on the same page, maybe slightly different sentence possibly, but you know, the end of the game was like hypothetically in a non, I guess, checkmate environment. And again, I might be misusing that term there. He could have moved the king from g8 to h8. Is that correct? If it was earlier in the game and that was freed up.
Yeah, if the queen wasn't putting pressure on h8 as she is, then you know the piece would be able to move there. But because the queen is pressuring that, the king can't move there.
And it just results in,
That's
I
just
think
the
you
end.
said, like
Yeah. Checkmate is a
position.
check, you know, attack under the king that has no way for the king to get out of. There's the three ways to get out of a check, which are you either take the piece attacking you, you attack the piece attacking you with another piece, or you block it,
Okay.
or you just move out of the way.
Awesome.
And none of those three are possible here. Therefore,
Okay.
the game is over.
It's
Congratulations.
over, and it's starting to click. I'll tell you that much. It's going to take
Checkmating
hours
is difficult.
No, but I see it. Like I get that now. It just ended up being in a position where there was no non-safe position or safe position.
Right. So I mean, the difference is like if I were to play against someone of this level, I would just be more aggressive in attacking because I'd feel confident that they wouldn't defend properly. But there's not a good way to teach someone brand new. It's difficult to explain how to attack at a more advanced level when you don't understand the basics of the game.
Right.
So this checkmate, I mean, I could have probably coached you to it earlier, but that totally defeats the purpose of teaching you kind of fundamentally sound chess.
Awesome. No, I definitely, especially this one, right? We played two before.
Yep. So this one definitely opened itself, like kind of presented itself rather than we like weasel into anything like that. And, you know, if you get an opportunity to get a checkmate in one, then you got to take it.
Absolutely. And I see how that was the end of the game, which is a breakthrough of sorts for me. So that's great.
Well, congratulations, because the first.
Thank you very much. I could not have done it without you, Crimson.